WellPod at DC on Riot Radio.
From meditation, stress management, safer substance use, and sexual health, we will literally talk sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Join us to dive deep into some student health questions. We'll learn about wellness together, try some coping tools, and meet some interesting people.
Your co-hosts, Heather and Craig.
Perfect blend of Campus Health and Wellness Center and SALS.
Each week, we'll DIY a wellness tool together.
And then nerd out and dig into the science behind how it works.
Email your health and wellness related questions to wellpod@durhamcollege.ca to be discussed anonymously on air. Welcome to the WellPod at DC.
Welcome to the WellPod at DC, live from the Media Hub here on riotradio.ca. So the student question of the week is: mood is low. Is there a way to increase happiness? Isn't there a happiness hormone? And we've been discussing hormones now for several weeks this season. So today we're going to explore the science behind serotonin, why belonging may be the true happiness booster, and ways to kind of foster connection and support serotonin for a better, happier mood. So serotonin has been kind of dubbed this like feel-good hormone. Have you heard it been talked that way?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that it's like what increases our emotion, makes me happy.
Yes.
Right?
It even became a very popular tattoo trend. And I think we have an image here to kind of showcase some of the ways that it's been used as a tattoo. So it was so trendy over the last few years. I even myself considered getting a little serotonin tattoo. Many are getting it to symbolize happiness, and so it's kind of being seen now as a happiness tattoo. But before you get some permanent ink, let's learn a little bit about this hormone. Perhaps it's been a little bit misunderstood and mismarketed. Perhaps there's this false story of serotonin as the happiness hormone and to blame for low mood, and that we need to increase it. We need more serotonin. I was excited when I did a little bit more research for the show because I uncovered a lot more to it.
There is definitely same thing for me. As much as I'm familiar with it, it's kind of still some of those the aspects of just the general everyday how people talk about it, and then there's a lot of fascinating stuff that it also does.
Absolutely. So serotonin, known as, can you say the big fancy scientific word here?
I don't know if I can. 5-hydroxytryptamine.
Wow. So it's a neurotransmitter, a hormone of the brain, essentially, that plays, and a hormone as well, plays a crucial role in regulating various activities, including behavior, mood, sleep, learning, memory, and gastrointestinal homeostasis. In fact, it was first found in the gut in 1935 by Italian Vittorio Ersparmar, and I'm really not doing good with my Italian there, who discovered it in the gut, and it made the the intestines contract. So serotonin has the important job of deciding which brain cells to turn off, inhibit during cellular conversations by controlling what cells speak to each other during cellular conversations. So serotonin can influence anything from how hungry we are to how anxious we feel.
For sure. So you have a lot of neurons in your body, the cell that allows all the signals to go, the 100 billion or so in our brain, and it's that portion that at the end of one neuron, it gets released over to the next neuron to cause that neuron to respond and send signals along so that we can coordinate things, similar to some of what we've talked about before in dopamine, endorphins, those kind of things.
Very interesting. So it's a biological function is very complex. Well, it's known and became really popularized for its effect on the brain regulating mood. Its function goes far beyond just mood regulation and happiness. For instance, your body needs it for things like making serotonin, so to help with sleep regulation. And also, besides being in mammals, it's found in worms and insects and fungi and plants. Did you know about this plant connection
I did
before?
not at all. I figured like other animals similar to humans, maybe chimpanzees and so on, but not the plants.
Yeah. High in walnuts, plantains, pineapples, banana, kiwi fruit, plums, tomatoes, but the highest can be found in chocolate with over an 85% cacao rate. In plants, serotonin is currently thought of maybe to have something to do with stress signals, but it's even found in psychedelic plants. So they have a really fun serotonin connection, so-called serotonerogenic.
Yeah.
Neurogenic?
Serotonergic.
Oh, there we go. Things like psilocybin, mushrooms, DMT or ayahuasca. I'm not saying that right as well. Ayahuasca, LSD, mescaline, or peyote cactus. So studies have found that they mediate their hallucinogenic effects, specifically by activating those serotonin receptors that you were talking about earlier. So although serotonin itself is not a hallucinogenic, it somehow activates the receptors, the serotonin receptors, and then produces the effects.
So like that second cell is more responsive maybe to the serotonin, right? Because that signal goes out, but then it binds to a receptor on that second cell. And then those chemicals, from what you're saying, because I've not come across that before, but that process would be, okay, make it so the serotonin is more able to react with bind to the receptors and cause that next signal to travel.
Oh. Some of the latest research, though, is finding that a significant portion is found, not in our brain, but in our gut. Over 90% of our serotonin in the human body is produced in our gastrointestinal tract, where it regulates our intestinal movements and numerous other physiological processes such as vomiting. So serotonin's presence in things like insect venom and many plants may function to cause pain and diarrhea. Plus, its widespread presence in many seeds and fruits, they are thinking serves as a way to help stimulate the digestive tract to expel those seeds, which can then help the seeds continue to grow and grow in other areas of the jungle and the environment. So serotonin essentially makes our gut move faster. And we call this diarrhea, and it just really helps kind of empty that geotract. So for those that maybe had those cute serotonin tattoos on, thinking they were kind of representing happiness, perhaps it's a different symbolic tattoo that they're in fact getting. So one of the most well-researched areas of social interaction and mood in serotonin is actually not with happiness. It's actually involved with aggression. So aggression is regulated by our serotonin system. Serotonin levels can both induce or inhibit aggressive behaviors. Unknown if this is direct or indirectly, but studies are showing that they drastically increase and decrease during social interactions. And the exact mechanism of serotonin influencing social behavior is still widely unknown. But this is why, if you've heard of individuals, we'll talk about an antidepressant called an SSRI later today. Some individuals notice a level of aggression that can start to happen when they first start taking it. So perhaps this has something to do here. Also, have you heard of the term hangry before?
For sure,
Have you ever been hangry?
I think I have. I think we all have.
Yeah. So hangry, as you might know, is when we are noticing kind of a hunger and a high irritability. And so it's also linked to fluctuations in our serotonin levels by research at the University of Cambridge.
And another thing that I came across that I was just investigating, we recently talked about oxytocin and how many interactions there are and so on. So I kind of just searched up serotonin and oxytocin.
Yeah.
And I came across some research in terms of postpartum mothers, right?
Yes.
So they've had their baby, and there's an increase in oxytocin, as we talked about, but also serotonin, but not so much tied to, if you will, the good mood, but more aggressive in terms of protection of their new offspring here, right? And so it was interesting that, again, it goes back to that, so used to it, thinking about it as the happiness hormone and whatnot, but it seems to have those, as you already mentioned, aggressive influences that it's present when we're, in that case, protecting our children.
Interesting. So despite its long-standing prominence in the pharmaceutical advertising, their claim that low serotonin causes depression, it's actually not supported by scientific evidence. The serotonin hypothesis of depression was popularized in the late 1990s and has been dubbed by the latest research as maybe an major oversimplification. The idea that depression is a mental illness, we know it as one of the major symptoms is low mood, as being caused by a chemical imbalance, is actually not backed by current empirical evidence. Depression does not correlate with any biological markers currently, like serotonin. One of our current best practices for treatment of depression, as mentioned earlier, is a form of medication we call an antidepressant. And the most common prescribed is one that we call a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, or an SSRI. Craig, what's happening here with this kind of SSRI?
Yeah, so as we were talking about before, there's our neurons and they're signaling to each other and so on. And so one of those chemicals that comes out of some of them is the serotonin. It's released from the end of the neuron to go over to the next neuron, to use us as the example, but release the serotonin, it travels over to the next neuron, binds to receptor, that neuron now fires. But what ends up happening afterwards is important too. So the original cell that released the serotonin will take that serotonin back into itself. A little bit oversimplification here, but it's recycling it, sort of use it again, or at least use some of the components of it to make more serotonin.
And that take back is what we call the reuptake.
The reuptake, you got it exactly right? Retaking it in, taking it into that cell. So then the science there, logic there is that someone with not enough serotonin, how can we give them more? Can we just give them sort of serotonin straight up or a precursor to it? Or in the case of these SSRIs that are going on, it is that reuptake inhibition of the serotonin is released. This chemical is causing the original cell not to reuptake it. And so then that cell needs to make more because that cell is, I'm going to have to signal again. And so I make more. Well, that original serotonin is out there already. So now to signal to the next cell over, the original cell releases more serotonin. Okay, now we have more serotonin overall in that space between the cells, and therefore the signal is more likely to be able to be transmitted. And then the idea there being, again, its effects on depression and so on, that there's additional, if you will, stimulation of the appropriate parts of the brain and so on.
Very interesting. So this world is very complex, and one of the quotes that I found really helped to explain this kind of new wave of understanding around depression is from Nasser Gamani, a lecturer of the psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. And he wrote a really interesting Psychology Today article about low serotonin therapy for depression, stating the brain just doesn't work this way. It's not about high this or low that. There are many chemicals in the brain interacting with each other in a very complex manner with a negative and positive feedback loop. So there's no sense to say that anything in the brain relevant to any illness has to do with simply having too much or too little of any chemical. Depression is not a chemical imbalance because there's no chemical balance. These are false metaphors. The brain is complex and many chemicals are active in many different directions in the brain. It's not about getting everything into some balance. It's about treating the disease itself. Yeah,
and that's interesting, just even stuff that I've processed myself in terms of, you get into the science and it's fascinating in terms of all that's going on. We've done that over the last few weeks, right, in terms of oxytocin and so on. But then I really like that quote in the sense of, so are we really able, as much as I'm interested in the science, can we really tone down everything or simplify everything we do to, he released a little bit of serotonin there, or he released a little bit of oxytocin. Are they that separate from each other? As much as it's good to investigate, but that's really fascinating
way
and a
more
really
entanglements.
way more connection as we've discussed. But I really like that quote that you shared there, just really getting that across.
Absolutely. So depression is now understood as a very complex, multifactorial condition involving things like inflammation, neuroplasticity, and stress response. It's not just as simple as saying it's it's a chemical imbalance. So this doesn't mean that SSRIs are ineffective. They still hold many benefits, but we're looking more into neuroplasticity and other ways that we can really help individuals live long and meaningful lives living with different illnesses. So serotonin, it's a regulatory neurotransmitter. It's not a direct giver of happiness chemical. Its primary role is modulating mood stability rather than generating bursts of joy and happiness. So it's more about emotional buffering, keeping mood fluctuations in check, than creating happiness itself. So low serotonin can lead to mood instability, but higher serotonin does not automatically mean happiness and bliss. Yeah, so while serotonin is present when we experience happiness, we have to be careful about assuming causation. So then it kind of begs the question, well, then what causes us to be happy? If it's not serotonin, and those with the tattoos maybe got a little bit of misinformation. Well, philosophers have been inquiring about happiness for thousands of years. Aristotle, when asked, what is the ultimate purpose of the human experience, stated happiness, and coined the term eudaimonia, meaning that meaning and purpose equals happiness. So really trying to live a life according to reason and virtue and not just pleasure. Ancient Greeks contended that happiness was more a case of mind. Socrates and Plato put forth the notion that happiness comes from living a virtuous life, emphasizing things like introspection and knowledge translation. The complete opposite of a concept of hedonism, which is the pursuit of pleasure, which is equaling happiness. In the Middle Ages, we saw a lot of Christian philosophers saying that happiness was in the hands of God. And in our modern area, what is really interesting is happiness has now almost become something assumed that humans are entitled to pursue. So it's in the U.S. Declaration of Independence, protected as a fundamental human right. And even the United Nations recognizes happiness as a fundamental human goal, declaring March 20th, today, Happy International Happiness Day, as an International Day of Happiness. Aristotle identified friendship as being one of the most important virtues in achieving this goal of happiness. And this is backed by some of our latest research and modern research. So having friends and social relationships has been shown to be the leading cause of happiness. Humans are primarily social beings. We have this need for social connection. And so a sense of community is associated with life satisfaction, positive correlation with well-being, especially when we've talked in the past about the field of positive psychology. I think it might have even been our first show that I talked about Dr. Martin Seligman. He's kind of seen as the father of positive psychology. He's written over 350 scientific articles, 30 different self-help books. One, for instance, Authentic Happiness, came out in 2002. But he created something called the PERMA model. It's kind of like this template for happiness. So PERMA, I don't know if you test your memory from 3 seasons ago. Season 1, episode 1. PERMA stands for positive emotions, engagement, positive relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. So positive relationships, this idea, all of the relationships we hold, all of the interactions, whether it's with peers, coworkers, our family, our friends, it's this feeling of being supported, loved, and valued by others. What's really interesting is the latest research on serotonin shares a similar correlation here. Yes. So research at Stanford University School of Medicine found that oxytocin, as you talked about earlier today, we talked about a few weeks ago, this love hormone, it drives our urge for social connection, triggering a major release of serotonin. This chain reaction results in us feeling happy. However, the University of Cambridge found that low levels of serotonin are associated with lower levels of self-esteem and reduced social status, thus indicating they feel that serotonin not only helps us feel connected, but may also influence how we perceive ourselves and our social networks. So could serotonin not be the happiness hormone or even just a diarrhea influencer, but maybe a meter of our social connections, our connections to others? Going deeper into this connection between serotonin and social belonging, we turn to studies on the human brain evolution. So have you heard of the Dunbar number?
Only because you shared with me earlier.
I'm testing maybe some many years
many
ago
years
university
ago.
courses for you in evolutionary biology. So the Dunbar number is the correlation between the size of a primate's cortex and the size of their tribe. And what they suggest is our cortex is not just there to kind of make us smart and have rational thinking, but also to help us attach to a tribe. And so it helps us with survival, kind of is this like body signal. We'll need a signal if we're in the in-group. So perhaps serotonin levels are indicating when we're in the in-group. And why it's connected to our cortex is because we need to learn new behaviors and new skills, neuroplasticity there, so that we can kind of learn how to be useful to this group and how to belong.
Yeah. And it totally makes sense from sometimes I'm oversimplifying sort of general thoughts about evolutionary biology and so, but sometimes when we think, oh, it evolved sort of to become smarter, and not to say that there weren't problems to deal with, but it's evolution doesn't work with in the future we need to be smarter. It's what are we dealing with right now? And yes, while there would be like challenges and so on, what you're saying there is definitely connecting from the challenges. Here's this social species that needs to learn how to interact with each other in order to be successful. And so then that drives the growth of the cortex as opposed to, oh, we just need to be smarter so this happens, which...
It's hard being social. It's hard being part of the in-group and making these connections. And so we might have needed to learn more as this got more and more complex.
Yeah, picking up signals. We've talked about that before too, right? Neuron mirroring and so on, mirror neurons, And so then it's, picking up on what's going on with other people when we don't necessarily know what's going on, but trying to figure all of that out, it takes a lot of brain power.
Absolutely. So this dramatically changes our approach to serotonin and to happiness. So happiness itself is not just this internal feeling. It's our awareness that we belong. It's this feeling that we're at home. And it's why belonging is such a focus for us here at Durham College. We understand this link between feeling like you're part of something and feeling like you're at home and feeling happy, overall positive well-being, which is all conducive for our learning. We need these aspects in order to learn. So the serotonin tattoo be a symbol of happiness, diarrhea, or belonging. It's a symbol of one really cool, complex hormone. After this break, we'll continue to explore belonging as maybe the true happiness booster with a reading of a short story by a student leader back here on riotradio.ca. Welcome back to the WellPod at DC, live from the Media Hub on riotradio.ca. Leonard Cohen saying, "There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." The idea of happiness as a light is a powerful metaphor, suggesting that happiness can illuminate our lives and guide us, bring us warmth and positivity. Just as light helps us see our way through darkness, happiness can guide us through difficult times and help us find joy and meaning in life. A beautiful classic treasury of passages and short stories, Lillian Watson's 1951 Light from Many Lamps offers invaluable insights of finding true happiness. We're joined today by a student leader, Loraine Price, who writes their own short stories of insights. Welcome, Loraine.
Thank you for having me on the show, Heather.
Yes, we're happy to have you here. So we often hear about the importance of shining our own light. Your story kind of takes that a step further, I hear, by showing the power of sharing that light with others. How does that act of giving and connecting contribute to our own sense of belonging and well-being?
That's a beautiful way to put it, Heather. I think that shining our own light is important, but it truly flourishes when we share it. What is the purpose of light if not to illuminate for others? We all possess a unique light. However, if someone is constantly forcing their light upon you, blinding you with its intensity, does it foster a sense of belonging? Does it allow you to shine your own light? Does it create space for others to shine? Such behavior might be ultimately self-centered and can disrupt our internal balance. In this story, Sunflower finds joy in sharing her sunshine with Bluebell. It's that act of reaching beyond ourselves and connecting with someone else that truly strengthens our sense of belonging. When we give and allow others to feel safe to give without threatening or appropriating them due to insecurity or a competitive mindset, we can all feel valued, we can all feel useful, and we can all reinforce our connection to the community. This shifts our focus from our own needs to the needs of others and creates a more inclusive environment, which counterintuitively boosts our own well-being. And, based on today's show, this makes perfect sense. Acts of kindness and connection have been shown to increase serotonin levels, which contributes to those feelings of happiness and contentment. It's like we're weaving a web of positive connections, and that web supports all of us, both emotionally and biologically.
Love that.
Yeah. So would you like to hear the story?
We would love to.
Okay. It's called Sunflower, and the moral is basically to share the sunshine. Sunflower was the tallest plant in the garden. Her face always turned towards the sun. She soaked up all the golden rays, her petals glowing brightly. Little Bluebell, who grew at her feet, was often hidden in Sunflower's shadow. Bluebell's tiny blue flowers drooped, and she sighed. "Oh, I wish I could feel the sun like you, Sunflower." A grumpy thistle nearby scoffed. "Why should she? You're tall, Sunflower. Enjoy your sunshine." But Sunflower felt a pang of sadness. She knew how much Bluebell loved the sun. "Don't worry, Bluebell," she said gently, bending her tall stalk slightly. "I can share my sunshine with you." Sunflower turned her broad face a little to the side, allowing some of the sun's rays to fall on Bluebell. "See," she said, smiling, "just a little shift and we both can enjoy it." Bluebell's petals perked up and her blue flowers began to shimmer. "Oh, Sunflower, thank you," she exclaimed, her voice filled with joy. "It's so warm and lovely." "You deserve to feel the sun too, Bluebell," Sunflower said. "We all do. And if we share, there's enough for everyone." Thistle, watching them, grumbled, but even he couldn't deny the happy glow that filled the garden. He saw how Bluebell's happiness made Sunflower's face seem even brighter. From that day on, Sunflower always made sure to share her sunshine with Bluebell, and when the other plants saw how happy they were, they began to share their own gifts too. Jasmine shared her sweet scent, Mint shared his cool leaves, and even Thistle, surprisingly, shared some of his water droplets on hot days. The garden became a place filled with kindness and joy. This story is for you. being kind helps to bring us joy and makes our world brighter.
Your story is such a wonderful reminder of how sharing our gifts and holding space for others can really make the world lighter and brighter. When we feel like we belong, like we're kind of all part of a garden. I loved that kind of metaphor and analogy. Sorry, we can see how this really can foster a sense of happiness.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to honor my my faculty, which was the horticulture.
Very nice.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing the story. That was very nice. And so I have a question for you. As a student leader through the Institute of Student Leadership, you share your gifts often, helping DC students feel a sense of belonging. And so can you tell us what it's like to be a part of the ISL?
Thanks for asking. Well, being on WellPod today is testament to the power of volunteering at the ISL program at Durham College. When I decided to write a booklet of encouraging stories, it wasn't just about fulfilling my volunteer hours. It was about using my skills to uplift others and create a sense of community. The ISL has 5 pillars: leadership, development, career development, personal development, equity, diversity and inclusion, and mental health and well-being. And this helped me to structure my experience and understand the value of what I was doing. For example, through my volunteer work, I was able to address the equity, diversity, and inclusion pillar by ensuring that my stories were relatable and accessible to a wide audience. And the mental health and well-being pillar was at the heart of my project, as I wanted to create content that would bring positivity and support to others. What I didn't expect was the incredible sense of connection that I gained. Through the ISL, I met so many like-minded individuals, including some in my creative calm mindfulness activity. I sat beside a person from Ontario Tech, and while we painted, we had such a nice chat about wellness rather than schoolwork. It was a space where we could all de-stress, connect, and learn from each other. If you're looking for a way to build your network, develop your skills, and truly belong at Durham College, the ISL is a fantastic opportunity. It's more than just a program. It's a chance to make a difference and find your community.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
and by our talk today, it's also a chance to increase some serotonin as well.
Betcha.
If you'd like to learn out a little bit more about the Institute of Student Leadership, you can find out information at durhamcollege.ca/ISL. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Loraine.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
After this break, we'll talk about ways to foster connection and support serotonin for a better mood. Back here on riotradio.ca. welcome back to the WellPod at DC, live from the Media Hub here on riotradio.ca. So while boosting serotonin through things like sun exposure and exercise and diet can promote emotional stability and better sleep, it's not necessarily a happiness hack. Craig, you kind of came across some different serotonin boosting stuff.
Yeah, there were a variety of tricks and tips and so on that I came across. Some maybe more legit than others.
Yes.
But one of the ones that I came across that was of interest to me was tryptophan. Have you heard of that chemical before, right?
Gobble, gobble, turkey time.
Exactly, right? Tryptophan. I've mostly heard it from making you tired and sleepy after eating a big turkey meal and so on.
Yeah.
But that it's that it's a precursor to serotonin, so that our bodies can convert it into serotonin, and then the logic there. Oh, if I can get more of that, then I'll end up producing more serotonin. Though there was some interesting other research I came across that said, in terms of increasing the amount of turkey, you're actually getting a lot of protein from that meat, and then our digestive tract is more focused on getting that protein. It's an important thing to get into our body. So various channels that allow that to move into our body actually block the tryptophan so that they can let other amino acids and so on into our body to use. So whether it's actually legit that maybe, sitting down to a turkey meal is going to make you any happier is, at least via serotonin, is not necessarily going to happen.
So perhaps we need to kind of reframe serotonin boosting habits as just supporting mood regulation and well-being rather than kind of chasing a chemical high, chasing happiness, really thinking of serotonin as your emotional seatbelt. I loved this metaphor, right? It doesn't drive you to happiness, but it just kind of helps you stay steady along the way, which I thought was a really interesting way to think about it. Yeah. Our bodies require a certain amount of serotonin to run optimally. Everyone's body produces a different optimal amount, and we have different levels based on things like genes and environment, but also like who we socialize with. So coming back to how much belonging, connection might be at play here. Sunlight, stress, exercise, age. So there's a lot at play here in our day-to-day that can really increase and decrease that serotonin. And there's no single cause for low serotonin. Typically, we see two main reasons happening. Either your body is just not producing enough, whether in your gut or in your brain, or it's using it inefficiently. So it's not able to fully use the serotonin in the most efficient way. Something's going on with low levels of vitamin B6 and vitamin D. And we often talk about vitamin D with sunlight as well here. So something is kind of correlating here with the different vitamins at play. But as we discussed last week with estrogen and this whole kind of second half of the season, the goal is just to support our body's overall endocrine system. So it's not, as mentioned earlier, this idea of perfect chemical balance. It's really recognizing how interconnected our bodies are. So it's not about increasing our serotonin. In fact, too much serotonin has been linked with low libido, and a very rare, extreme case, it can cause something called serotonin syndrome. So it's a condition that can cause shivering, heavy sweating, confusion, diarrhea, seizures, and even fatal if not caught and treated early. So serotonin isn't going to boost happiness, but what can? We've talked a lot today about the power of connection and belonging. An article, 15 Ways to Increase Your Happiness in Psych Central from 2017, explored different ideas to really boost the sensation of happiness. So things like savoring, finding joy in the little things, getting in flow state. So there's a really great Pixar Disney movie, Soul. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, Soul.
I don't think I've watched that one.
It's a really interesting one, and they articulate and demonstrate flow state, kind of using this purple, shiny glow. And so we can find this whether we're playing a video game, when we're studying, when we're hanging with friends, when we're working on a hobby. That idea of like losing yourself in something, it's really healthy for us. Practicing gratitude, creating goals, mindfulness or living in the moment, self-compassion, being good to ourselves, walking in nature, laughing and playing. But as reiterated many times today, it's that connection with other that really ties us to the sensation of happiness and really supports that serotonin system. So if our focus is not on boosting serotonin directly, but listening to our levels of serotonin as that kind of social connection meter, then thinking about how can you increase your social connection. We talked a little bit earlier, it's hard. Human beings are complex and social interactions become more and more layered, it feels like, as the older that we get. And so some different things you can do to boost your social connections. There was something called the coffee shop habit. So the idea of going to somewhere like a coffee shop or a grocery store, wherever it is, the library, but being consistent, going at the same time every week. So once a week, going to the same place, same time, and kind of getting used to, like the gym, for instance, kind of who's there at that time.
Yeah, it's funny. Just I'm smiling because I tend to do that with my local coffee shop.
Yes.
And on my walk in the morning, I stop there. And just today, I was trying to get in early, and this is not me complaining, but I finally spoke to someone that we've smiled at each other for many, many weeks and had a full-on conversation, and I left. Yeah.
Look at you
way
using
more
the
happy.
first
So
tip
thank
of
you,
today.
coffee shop habit.
Yeah. Things like calling people instead of texting, right? So even if you have nothing really to talk about, considering calling somebody kind of out of the blue and just making those casual conversations, going somewhere that kind of has a social vibe. And so joining a club, a fitness class, a book club, scheduling regular interactions with people. So sometimes we hate to do this, but actually saying, hey, haven't seen you in a while, or really looking to strengthening this connection. Next Friday, next Tuesday, let's put it in the calendar. But research on friend making indicates 3 key things that we need to form connections. Proximity, we need to physically be close and in areas with people. 200 hours is what current research is looking at that it takes to make a friend. So we need to be proximal for about 200 hours with somebody, a shared interest, sometimes called the timing of life as well. So shared interest, shared hobby, kind of being a Durham College student, you're sharing this experience. So proximity, 200 hours, and kind of a shared connection. But as mentioned earlier, belonging is a focus for us here at Durham College. We want our campus community to feel like a home. And this also boosts your happiness, serotonin, and your learning. There's many ways to get involved in campus. We heard earlier from Loraine from the ISL, so you can join the Institute of Student Development. They offer lots of programming, not just at orientation time, but all throughout the year. We have the Campus Recreation and Wellness Center. So we had Bree on a few weeks ago. You can go to the Flex Center. They have open gym times, fitness classes. We also have a whole recreational area. So if you want to join a sports club, that's also an area. And then the Campus Health and Wellness Center, we have a variety of different groups like Creative Calm and Camp Wellness, where you can come out and meet some people. So that's the end of our show today. Resources will be mentioned on our Instagram account at wellness@DC. Don't forget, you can email your questions to be discussed anonymously on air, wellpod@durhamcollege.ca. You can follow the Media Hub on social media at DCSA Media Hub. But thanks for exploring what it means to be well with us today on the WellPod at DC, live from the Media Hub on riotradio.ca.